fan of this show or of you or me, but even a stopped clock is right twice a day, is terrific on the subject of torture. Senator Feinstein of California is the one who put into the public record of the Senate the 6,000 pages that the Senate Intelligence Committee staff had uncovered of the tortures that George Bush authorized. George Bush personally asked her not to. Barack Obama personally asked her not to. John McCain said, because he's a victim of torture, put it in there, and if you don't, Diane, I will. Anyway, she's interrogating Haspel, who was up for Senate confirmation to be the head of the CIA. If she had asked just 2 more questions, or if she had known what we now know, then Bloody Gina would never have been confirmed.
Yeah. You go on also to mention here that most judges would have dismissed the charges against the defendant for such criminal behavior.
Oh, let me tell you why. Without even getting to the torture, this guy's been waiting for trial for 14 years. 14 years. Isn't there a speedy trial clause in the Constitution? Yes. Does it pertain to Cuba? Yes. Here's why he's been waiting for trial for 14 years. He's on his second defense team. The defense team is civilians and military. The first team quit. Why did they quit? Because the feds bugged their communications with their translator and with their client. Most federal judges and state judges, learning that the government did that to the defense team, would dismiss the charges against the defendant. But this is Guantanamo Bay, where the prosecutors and the judge have the same boss, the Secretary of Defense. And so sometimes due process gets watered down. It's terrible. Just terrible. And the torturing of this guy initially was on the basis of anonymous tips. Anonymous tips.
You know, you mentioned also that cost us, it's spending $500 million a year
to keep Gitmo open. There's only 37 prisoners there now. When Gitmo was first opened, you and I were criticized for condemning the concept of a Devil's Island. Supreme Court agreed with us. The Bush administration lost 5 out of 6 Supreme Court cases, and the 6th had to do with where a person was physically going to be tried. But all the cases where they tried to argue the Constitution doesn't apply, the laws don't apply, federal judges don't apply, the Supreme Court shot them down. You and I argued that the whole thing was illicit, and the 9/11 people and whoever else they gathered up, like this person, Nashiri, should be tried in federal court. If that had happened, all of this would have been over with 10 years ago. Gitmo would have been closed. Instead, they're spending $500 million a year to keep it open, and they continue to trash the Constitution as they do so. Every president, from George W. to the present one, Obama, to his credit, tried to close it. Congress enacted legislation that barred him from doing so. Trump boasted about it, said torture works. We should put people from the streets of New York down in Gitmo. I assume it was typical bravado and exaggerating by him. But it's still there. It's still a Devil's Island. It's still costing a fortune. It still trashes the Constitution. And people like Bloody Gina get to walk free.
And there's another element to it. We have no right being down there. Cuba's not our country.
Correct. That's where
the other part of this is that it's going on now 20 years down there.
Yes.
So you said $500 million. So that's $10 billion we spent.
Yeah.
$10 billion as the infrastructure of this country is rotting away. And again, this is barely any news at all. And an interesting fact in here, by the way, right in your first paragraph, you say this guy Nashiri was a Saudi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where did he get the money? And where did he get the explosives sufficient to blow a hole the size of a baseball diamond in the side of an American ship? Where did he get that from? Well, we can guess, and it would be an educated guess where he got it from. The same creeps that Joe Biden is about to meet with in the next couple of weeks. Not the same human beings, this character that runs the Saudi government was a child at the time, but the same culture, the same family, the same group, the same people that dispatched 19 murderers to take down the World Trade Center and attack the Pentagon. And they're still our friends. The same people that slaughtered Khashoggi, the reporter for the Washington Post, cut him up into pieces while they played classical music in the background, and they're still our friends.
Again, that's why I pointed it out. How come they, what was it? Allegedly, 15 of the 19 people on those planes were Saudis on 9/11, as the story goes?
I think it was 19 of the 20, and the 20th, of course.
Anyway, how come we invaded Afghanistan and not Saudi Arabia? The hypocrisy, the sickness. And that's what this article is really brings it down to. What kind of country are we living in, and how sad it's become?
The government recognizes no limitation on its power. If this government can torture a human being and then boast about it, it recognizes no limitation on its power as long as it can get away with it politically.
And they're getting away with it.
Government without limitation is the most dangerous thing on the planet.
And that's what we have.
Yes. It's not just bloody Gina. She couldn't have done this alone. It's the whole culture.
The whole culture
of the CIA and the Department of Defense and Department of State, and with some exceptions, the White House.
And again, your CIA with that guy, that murderer, Harry Truman. I love Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Let's drop atom bombs on them.